Have you wrestled with imposter syndrome, excessive and unsubstantiated self-doubt coupled with an uncanny lack of confidence? I'm your host, Betty Danowitz. Listen as I interview highly successful individuals about their experience with this imposter syndrome and how it manifests itself in their lives in this If You Ask Betty podcast series dealing with imposter syndrome. Hi, Dr. Kevin. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Betty, how are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm glad to see you wore your Nugget Head special hat.
That's the traveling hat of Dr. Nuggethead now.
Yes, it's looking like it's seen quite a few cities at this point.
He's been around.
He has. Yes. Good. All right, Kevin, tell us about you.
Well, I like to take long walks on the beach.
Pina coladas.
Pina coladas.
Yeah.
Fruity drinks with little umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those of you that are listening that don't know me, I'm a newly minted doctor as of about a year ago. Prior to that, go way back machine. I ran away and joined the Army when I was 19. Figured it was a way to get some quick cash to go back to school, which the GI Bill, if you're familiar with that, was, basically you trade your life to the military for a few years and then they pay for college. Well, a few years later, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at this stuff. Maybe I'll just stick around. So I re-enlisted, and then I got used to it. I re-enlisted again, and then I was like, well, I'm past the halfway point. Might as well make a career out of it. Then eventually retired, and then I could live under a pine tree for a couple of weeks, which was pretty good, but not really a marketable skill in the civilian world. So went back to school, used all that, to finally went back and got my IT degree and was heading down a IT career path. 3 years into that new career, the manager of the training department in corporate said, hey, we'd really like to invite you to join our department. And just same story, right? I saw you present, at one of the meetings. You're really good at that. You'd be a great trainer. How would you like to join the training department?
We've heard this story before.
IT background
with many people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the accidental.
Yes,
instructional
absolutely.
Design. Mm-hmm. Then he just had this vision. Back then, there was no LMS, there was no e-learning. All training was like 3-ring binders. Read this book, go take a test. He had a vision. He said, "Hey, I want to convert all this to an online university, so you can go on a website and then we can track who does that." I had never heard of an LMS before, but it sounded fascinating. And he said, "If you're interested, you work directly for me and go figure out what that is." And therein lies history. So another decade or so goes by. Got the whole e-learning department up and running, and basically self-taught myself the industry during that period of time. And then it was getting to the point where I was bored with corporate. Not the work, don't get me wrong. I love the work. That's why I'm still doing it today. It's just the same audience, the same content year after year after year. So I started freelancing just to see what else was out there. And a year after I started freelancing, I had 2 full-time jobs and one had to go. So I quit, started Nuggethead Studios. And then picked up a couple more degrees along the way.
Couple more. So how many degrees do you have? Like, tell us.
Well,
like,
the master's and the doctorate.
So you have a bachelor's in information technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a master's in?
Master's in instructional design and technology, and a doctorate in the same.
In instructional design and technology.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. And now you are the chief Nugget Head, making things happen at the Nugget Head Studios.
Yeah, so it's been a fun ride. I'm enjoying it. It's like, I don't, they say if you love your work, it's not a job.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you focus on any particular part of instructional design, or is there anything you specialize in?
Comics for
Mm,
learning,
okay.
visual language, visual design, which is often confused with graphic design. Um,
Tell us the
Graphic
difference.
design is a
Yeah.
different skill. Visual design or visual language is how to communicate a message without words, wordless pictures. So think of Lego instructions, IKEA instructions,
Hmm.
where you can look at instructions. Think of a flight safety card, right? They're designed in such a way that it's universal for anyone, any language, to look at those and understand how to put on a life vest or jump out the side of the plane if it lands in the water.
Sure.
So I'm working on trying to teach more folks how to use that discipline in, um, e-learning design and
Hmm.
that thing, wordless pictures.
Yeah. So, what would you say are your biggest accomplishments in life and in work?
Oh goodness. Recreating life in the form of children and grandchildren, I think, is a
Yeah.
blessing. And somebody told me years ago, um, we're all lucky to be children, but we're not all fortunate to grow old.
Mm,
So
very true.
being able to grow old and see children come up behind you that's got your same bloodline. I mean, it's like there's no words. It's just a really warm inside feeling. So my greatest life achievement was being able to do that
Yeah.
and see them grow and be prosperous and successful. Um, Professionally, it has to be the terminal degree, obviously the doctorate. I mean, that's and the other thing is most people don't flip a switch at the age of 56, say, hey, yeah, I think I'm going to go get a doctorate.
Yeah. Most people
So
don't.
there's most people, I don't
They
know how
don't.
many don't or do, but
Yeah.
it was never on my radar. I was one of those that barely graduated high school with, I think, a 2.8 or something. And because of that, I never got offer letters to go to any college. So I was, typical rebellious community college kid.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I said I ran away and joined the army, that's an actual fact, because if I didn't, there was a particular person I got to know on a first name basis. We can just call him the judge. And
Okay.
he gave me an ultimatum, kind of like, the next time I see you, you're going to wear my uniform, or I'll give you a choice, something about Uncle Sam's uniform or my uniform. And then,
In other words, in the penitentiary or the jail.
county jail, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, that delinquent that I was, I'll show you. I'll go wear Uncle Sam's uniform before you tell me I have to.
I'm so glad you did, because I think it really changed you. I mean, I didn't know you back then, but
No, it saved my life. I mean, it
yeah.
was literally, and we don't have time to get into that, but it literally saved my life. And turned out I was good at it, and I needed that. I needed that. It was kind of like I had all this energy and enthusiasm, but I had no direction and no discipline.
And you get that in the army.
And yeah, you get it
Yeah.
in there. And I needed that structure. So, I don't know. I guess I don't know if it was just a happenstance, random. I'm going to go do this for a job, and it turned into a career.
Hmm.
I don't know that retiring from the military is an accomplishment, but it's not for everybody. Just like anything, right? Not everybody's cut out to do certain things, and there's a
Sure.
lot of people do their 2, 3, 4 years in the military, and it's like, yeah, it's not for me. I'm out. They do their initial commitment and then they get out.
Yeah.
And,
And I think that's fair. I
yeah,
mean,
no, it is certainly.
yeah.
Yeah, and
When
then no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what would other people say about you? So if I were to ask them, tell us about Kevin, tell us about his biggest accomplishments, what would other people say?
Oh, I was thinking about all the things people would say. Oh, that guy's so rude.
No, not true at all. You're not rude. You haven't been rude
Um,
to me yet.
No, not to digress anything, but I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and there's a typical attitude about people in the North
Mm.
in that part of the country, right? But down in the South, that same attitude, you're like, oh, that was rude. It's like, no, really, it's just like it's how we all talk, right?
Yeah.
So
They're
I
still
still got
telling
a
you
lot of
you're
those
rude.
euphemisms and stuff from then.
From
But anyway,
Chicago. Chicago.
in Chicago,
Yeah.
Chicago.
Chicago. Chicago.
And then Chicago.
Chicago. I'm doing it wrong.
Sounded pretty good. I don't know. Say that question again. I'm sorry.
What would others say about you?
What I hope they would say is I'm very creative. Sense of humor. I don't like talking about myself, but
I know. I can tell.
I like to think I'm creative. I like to think there's no problem. Every problem has a solution. You just haven't found it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think others would say that you are fun to be around, that you are a Lego fanatic.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like I would like to be a Lego fanatic like you someday. Maybe.
I like to think
don't
of
know.
it as an enthusiast, a Lego
Enthusiast. Okay, because fanatic sounds like a little stalkery and like you might need to calm down type of thing.
No,
Yeah, okay,
yeah, it's kind of like more obsessed with Lego.
More obsessed.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not obsessed.
There's a thin line between obsession and dedication, and I feel like you straddle that a little bit.
Yeah, that's like in the sports. There's a difference between a fan and a fanatic.
Okay, so you're a Lego fan. I'm fine with that. I'm fine to adjust to that. You do like the Star Wars. I think you're incredibly creative. You make things that are complicated or feel intimidating, like drawing, simple for those of us who feel like that's just not our thing. Yeah. And I think you're a good human. And I don't usually like on these, it's usually about you talking, but you're not telling me what other people would say. So I'm going to say the things that I would say about you. And apparently you're a pretty good cook. I hear you like to bake.
Yeah. Well, it goes back into that creative thing, right? So I always think of, think of the analogy, you get like in our world, e-learning, you get a storyboard, you get some assets, and then you follow the storyboard and you assemble the assets and you produce some product.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way when you make a pizza or guacamole. You've got ingredients, which are your assets,
yes,
and you have a set of instructions. And then the creative part is how can I tweak the recipe or how can I tweak the ingredients to come out with something a little more creative or different.
So you just applied creativity to everything in life.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Either that, everything's a game. Because if it's something I don't want to do or it's something I don't like doing, then I'm make a game in my head about it. So I get through like mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
Like,
trying to do the checkerboard. Do you ever do that? Try to make the checkerboard.
Well, the last I'm waiting for it's raining a lot, so the grass is going to grow and it's really bright green right now.
Yeah.
So I think the next time I'm going to do the big S waves all the way through the yard, so it looks like a big.
You've already got it planned
wave.
out.
I do.
That's great.
And then a few years ago, got so long because it was rain, we never could get it done. And I literally cut a giant nugget head in the grass in the backyard.
How cool. That's amazing.
I might do that again, then to get a drone shot of it.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So what has been your experience with imposter syndrome?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're breathing, you've experienced it at some point in your life. If you're not, then if you're listening, and no disrespect, but you're probably a narcissist. But
it's fair.
If you're, humility is a hard thing to do a lot of times because we all have personalities and egos. Some are a little bit. I mean, there's a difference between being confident and being, ego, that kind of thing, right? And I think most recently right now is just the doctorate. You know, I was at an event last Friday, the spring graduation of the next class of doctorates are graduated this past weekend. So I went to a reception to, congratulate all the came a year behind me, and there was one of the newly minted doctors was referring to her advisor, which was my advisor, by doctor, like that. And then he says, "We're all scholars now. You can use my first name. You don't have to address me as doctor." And it caught me off guard because a year later, I still call him doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, you can just call me by my first name." I said, "I know it's about I don't know, it's like a level of respect or something, right?"
Sure.
But he said the word scholar, and I'm thinking, I'm in a room full of scholars. How did I get here? I don't belong here. I don't feel like I don't deserve to be here. Or what else do I need to do in order to feel like I deserve to be here?
Mm-hmm.
So it's most recent. That's probably the biggest thing right now. It's trying to accept this accomplishment at the level of what it took to get here.
Yeah.
I could care less about. I've never been concerned about what other people think of me. That's never been. I've got broad shoulders, thick skin. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's how I think about myself, how I care about myself. And and maybe it's the creative curse thing, but I will beat the snot out of myself over things that other people, "Oh, that's really good." Or, congratulations. "Oh, that's really great." I'm really, whatever. I'm thinking, that was a piece of crap. That was junk. Whatever. Even my dissertation, even my research dissertation, published research, it got published.
Yeah.
And even now I go back and look at it, it's like, oh man, that could have been so much better.
Yeah.
Who approved that to get published? Why, So it's the constant compare. I think imposter syndrome, I think to me anyway, it's, especially in the world of social media and seeing everything going on, you have more access to other things going on, and the instant comparison, like you're instantly comparing yourself.
Yes.
And there's another example is that friend or family member who's always posting they're on the boat and they're drinking margaritas, or they're always at the beach, and it's all you always ever see them is when they're only posting leisure and vacation photos.
Right? All their highlights, only the highlights.
Yeah, the highlight reel, right? You're thinking, how do they ever? What did they do for a living that they could take every weekend off to the beach? Kind of. So you're falsely comparing yourself to images that other people are, and the flip side of that, people show their highlight reel because, and the psychology behind it is because that's not their real world. So they want to show the best pictures of the best things that they're doing to give the impression that they're living and they can match up to what they're comparing their own selves to. Mm-hmm. It's just weird dichotomy of goofy psychology that I think we're all affected at some level. I know I am.
Yeah.
I'm Agreed. Constantly comparing myself.
Yeah. So when you're having like an episode of imposter syndrome, how does it manifest itself? So we've talked a little bit about, for some people, like it's perfectionism, it's overachieving, it's self-sabotage. So like you're recognizing that a lot of it comes from comparison. Like what do you then experience? Like what happens? Does your behavior change? Do you have feelings? Like what happens?
Depression is probably the first thing that happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, what have you been doing with your life? Right? Like, or I'm in the wrong line of work kind of thing. Or, to give you an example, I was on a side project. I was hired to illustrate a book cover for a book. coming
Yeah.
up later this year. So I did some concept drawings, did some stuff, and put it together. Showed the author, like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I hope the publisher likes it. I hope the editor likes it. Man, it's fantastic. And I'm thinking to myself, and then I go out and I see other similar designs, and I'm thinking, okay, time to go back to work. You've not practiced enough. Your line work isn't as good as theirs. Your ink work, what kind of brush did they use? Your brush work isn't as clean as that. Your shadow, light shadow, you're so weak in that area. I mean, I just start beating myself up, right? Because my style is my style, but then I'm comparing my style that how can I improve it? So there's this initial wave of depression, but then then following right behind that, get back to work.
Yeah.
You got a lot of work. You're not there yet. Keep going. You're not there yet. You're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of my drive is that I'm constantly, what can I do? Where can I get better?
So you're getting some benefit from having imposter syndrome in that it's motivating you to want to get better. But at the same time, it's also telling you that the work that you've done, which the evidence proves is fantastic and amazing, it's telling you that it's shitty and not good enough. So like
in me,
for you. So like it's motivating you to do more, which is great because we all need internal intrinsic motivation, but it's doing that by saying that what you did wasn't enough, not good enough.
Yeah. And then the following is it's in your, I mean, you can run that in a matter of 3 seconds, all of that in your head, but then it's action, right? Yeah. And then there's a second wave of depression. There's never enough time. Where's the pill where I don't need to ever sleep again?
Yeah.
Right. Because there's just not enough time to do all the things that I want to do. And then you get overwhelmed with what you think you need to do, which you don't really need to do. You're putting pressure on yourself because in order for you to keep up, to keep pace, to be relevant, to be, whatever, put it on your own umbrella over yourself. What you think you need is not what other people probably think of you the same way.
Yeah.
So then that second wave of depression comes in. It's like you get overwhelmed. It's like when you don't clean the house for 6 months and then you get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's never happened, but I'm just saying.
Sure.
Well, I can compare it to a bucket of Lego that I need to sort. It's been sitting over there for 6 months. And then I get a second bucket and then a third bucket. It's like, oh my gosh, now it's overwhelming. That's a lot to sort.
Right.
And I need a lot of time to do it. So then it's like, well, just do a little bit at a time. It's like, oh, but I've got other things to do. It's just it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And it kind of eats away at you. And eventually it kind of turns into what's like, not why haven't you gotten this done? Or maybe it goes, when are you going to get this done? Then it goes to why haven't you gotten this done? And then it goes to what's wrong with you that you can't get this done? And it turns into there's something wrong with you, not you didn't finish a task or you didn't you know what I'm like? You're nodding. I mean, it turns inward. It turns mean.
Yeah, it's a combination of procrastination because you're overwhelmed, or in my world, procrastination it's a mental state. It depends on if it's analytical work or writing or creative work or whatever. You got to have the right mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't just turn that on and off. It's got to come. Like a lot of times I'll get an idea that either I have or I'm being asked to produce, and I won't do a thing for 2 weeks. I'll just let it bake. Think about it. And then when it's time, I tend to produce, dare I say, better results when I'm up against time.
Yeah. High quality, rapid results because your procrastination has caused it to bake a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe it's not procrastination. Maybe it's just your process and it looks like procrastination.
Oh, it's definitely my process.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I wait. I do my best work at the witching hour.
Yeah. When you're going to do a session at a conference, 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, the night before, that's when all the great ideas come.
Yeah. That's
And
when it
you're,
sucks because, I got to make a slide for that.
yeah, I got to,
I need to make a slide for that.
yeah. No, I've been there. Okay. So when you think about the way that imposter syndrome manifests itself in your life, so you mentioned procrastination, you mentioned like motivation, right? Depression. I definitely feel that one. Like just like
Yeah.
feeling like almost like a paralysis because you're like, well, I can't do anything, right? So I might as well just not do anything. And
Yeah.
so,
You just shut down.
yeah, just a little bit of a shutdown. Yeah. Not a hard boot down, but like a restart that takes a really long time because you're like up, right? Like you're like updating everything. Anyways, I don't know why I had to make it like that, but okay. Are there other contributing factors? So, like we've talked in previous episodes about common triggers, like, we talked about comparison. We've talked about like if you have a new job or a new project, those types of things. But is there something else about you, like maybe something in your past or something about your personality or something that makes this imposter syndrome phenomenon happen or makes it worse, maybe?
Oh, yeah. No, parental issues. That's always the answer, right? No.
Often.
Um,
Not always, but often.
um,
Yeah.
no, if I want to go all the way back, right? The let's say high school. That's for instance. I was never in the what do you call it? The collegiate level high school classes, like the advanced classes. Those kinds of things. Art class I was, but no other class. I mean, I got a D in art class in my senior year because I gave up. I was just
Sure.
like, I've proven myself. I've won like some kind of blue ribbon award already. Well, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have to, kind of thing, attitude kind of thing.
Sure.
But never got picked for the team, and I went out for this. I went out for sports, and you four string bench, whatever, right? And it's like you can never measure up no matter what you do. And then there's always that period of where you're going to try to impress your friends to do something to get their attention. Oh, did you see what he did? That's very cool. So we'll accept you now because you did this thing, So I would do stupid things like that to try to get attention. And I attracted the wrong attention. And therein lies the story we were talking about before where I met the judge.
Right.
And and then even in the military, it kind of the same thing. You've got these people that you really look up to and you really respect, and like how do you measure up to that, right? How do I do that? And never really reaching or never really finding that formula. You just keep your head down, keep doing your job. When I started my company, I had Betty, I had no plan. I had a wing and not even a wing. I don't think it was just I quit.
Yeah.
I had one client. I had one client that was going to pay the bills for about 6 months, and I gave up 15-year vested interest in a company that I could have still be working there today.
Sure.
And so I think the drive, part of the imposter, my case, or just my view of it, I never thought I could measure up. Even winning awards or being recognized for things, I was like, that's just because there was no competition. You have to give an award out, and there was nobody else. So it's Kevin's turn. Let's give him one. It's always been I didn't really earn it. It was just, I just happened to be at the right place when they had an extra one sitting on the table kind of thing.
They were like,
And
that guy, he looks sad. Let's give him an award.
it's just like, I don't, and it kind of, and fast forward all the way up to my recent degree. There were times towards the end of there when I was talking to my advisor. He's like, "Oh yeah, just do this. We'll clean it. Just do that. We just gotta, a good dissertation is a done dissertation. You're not going to change the world with it. You can change the world later. Just get this thing." And I was just thinking, it's like I felt like I needed to measure up and do a better job, but at the same time, I had this feeling that I didn't really earn it. And I think I might always live with that. I don't, how do you allow yourself to accept that you did, in fact, kill yourself for about 6 years and read thousands and thousands of research articles and wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And
like you did that.
I did do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't just have an extra doctorate just sitting over there on the table. And they were like, this guy gives a good effort. Give it to him.
And I think that's going to be, I don't know that I kind of accepted it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But you still feel often like, did I really earn this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I really, is this beautiful person I'm sharing my life with, is there waiting for another shoe to fall? What is she doing with me?
She's pretty cool. I mean, I could see you were wondering about that because she's pretty cool. All right. You still got a couple more minutes. I got one more question for you.
Okay. What is it? Shoot.
Okay. So my question is, why did you want to be part of this Imposter Syndrome project?
Because I think more and more people feel or experience it in different ways, but very similar in our industry. Because I see a lot of people trying to measure up to be like, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but the self-proclaimed experts or the people that put their own titles on themselves about who they are.
Yeah, Tim Slade calls them furus. Furus, yeah, not gurus, right, but furus. Yeah, furus.
And it's exactly that. You talk a good game, but you don't really produce anything. You don't really give back anything. But yet you have this massive following that, and it's you're doing a disservice. And those folks, I don't know if those folks are if it's a part of the whole imposter thing. It's like, well, in order for me to be a recognized somebody in this industry, I need to follow this person so I can learn and follow their coattails. So is that kind of the same thing? And that's why I'm agreed to do this, because I'm telling you, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So if I take all of what we just talked about, how did I get to where I am? Successful business, earn a couple of degrees in my later years for whatever accomplishments I've done, and started a couple businesses, whatever. Be authentic to yourself. Be authentic to be. The other saying about the person online is different than they are in person. Like a band, right? A band, band on an album sounds great. You go to a live concert, they suck.
It's not so great.
They're not the same band, right?
Yeah.
Be the same. You're just whatever your personality is in person, then be that personality online. Don't try to compare yourself to somebody that you're not, because it will catch up to you. And whether somebody else exposes you, you'll run out of energy because you can't keep up.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to keep that up yourself, that facade, if you will. So just be true to yourself, be authentic, put your head down, do the work, find however you do it, find your discipline, wherever the discipline is.
Yeah.
Procrastinate with fever, but know that the more you procrastinate, you gotta knuckle down at one point.
Yeah,
put
for
the work
sure.
in.
Nugget down, maybe. Nugget down.
Nugget down.
I like that.
Nugget up.
Well, I'm so glad that you are authentically who you are, because I can tell everyone on this podcast, I've spent time with you online and in person, and you're the same. Actually, I think you might be more fun in person, just saying.
Well, it just depends on how much trouble you want to get in and how much time
And
we have.
how many Legos you want to buy because of you, which I've done plenty of that. So
I'm so sorry for that.
no, you're not. You're not sorry at all, but that's nice of you to pretend to be sorry. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kevin Thorn, for sharing your experience with us. And thanks to the listeners. I hope that you'll continue with the series and hear more stories about dealing with imposter syndrome. There's so many amazing people that deal with this every day, and sharing their story helps them and you to feel less alone. So be sure you follow If You Ask Betty on LinkedIn and YouTube for more episodes and resources about imposter syndrome. Oh, and tell your friends about it. Hit that share button so that they also know that they are not alone. Peace out.